Well, here we are, folks. Happy Sabbath. Well, I've got some fun things to show to you. You probably don't realize you're tied to a cat scratching post. Hopefully, it'll be all right. Um, Here's some fun stuff. Now, I want you to know I got a website called prophecies plural 101.com. Also a .us. The US one is the one that's working now. I'm resurrecting the .com. So I want to show you the some tidbits of Bible principles. Jesus says that he's the Alpha and Omega in Revelation 1 there, the first and the last. And in harmony with that, we have our common Adventist understanding of the nations of Bible prophecy, which are not the same as the nations of world history. I'll get into that. Starting with Daniel 2, which you know, we have Babylon, which is parallel to Papal Rome. Medo-Persia, 1 Babylon 2. Medo-Persia, which is parallel to the United States, because it's a two-part country, and the USA is a two-part country, republicanism and Protestantism, with a separated church and state. A church without a pope and a state without a king. Number 3 in the sequence of Daniel 2 is, of course, Grecia, which is a symbol of the world, the UN, which are the globalists of the world. Well, which are pagans, and actually most of them worship the dragon, the Oriental countries especially, dragon worshippers. So after Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, pagan Rome, which is equal to modern Rome. At the end of the world. Then and that was as far as the Millerites ever got with it. But now we understand that the 5th nation is Papal Rome. Which is the king of the north, in Revelation 16:13. It's a part of the threefold union, 16:13, of at the very end of time, 6, the USA, which will be passed up by or taken over by the United Nations not soon after Trump's election. And then, of course, number 8 is modern Rome. And these all together being the sixth. Well, these were consecutive nations, consecutive world rulers, but the last three all rule the world together. So you have the USA as the sixth, the UN together is the sixth, and modern Rome also is the sixth. So there we have 666. And in the terms of Revelation 16:13, the United States is the false prophet. Excuse me. And which is also in Revelation 13, verses 13 and 14. The United Nations is the dragon power, the atheistic dragon power. And then, of course, modern Rome is always the beast. And when we come to Daniel 7, Rome, excuse me, just had breakfast. If you count the horns in Daniel 7, there are 8, and Rome is always the 8th. Oh boy, I'm getting at a bad angle. Rome is always 8th. So, see, I was going to say something about the kingdoms of world history are not the same as the kingdoms of Bible prophecy. In world history, you begin with, Assyria. Then 2 is Egypt. These are world dominating kingdoms of history. 3, those that count the kingdoms of history instead of the kingdoms of Bible prophecy often, well, always pretty much forget that Israel was an independent world ruling power under King Solomon. Then came Babylon. 5, Medo-Persia. 6, Grecia. And then number 7, pagan Rome. And the 8th is always papal Rome. Rome is always the 8th and is of the 7. The 8th is of the 7. This is the riddle of Revelation 17. The 8th is of the 7. And this turns out to be a pattern that repeats really quite a lot in Bible prophecy and history. Now, if you look at prophecyhelps101.com or US, article number 51, I'm going to guess I'll put it over here. Article number 51, we analyze, not we, but me and other Bible scholars better than myself, much better, analyze the relationship of the 7 churches and this riddle of the 7th, the 8th being of the 7 in the history of ancient Israel. And it's really quite an interesting study. Article number 51 on prophecyhelps101.com. We start with Ephesus in the 7 churches. Ephesus is 1. Smyrna is 2. Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamus. Pergamus is 3. I got a crib sheet, fortunately, because my brain gets all scattered. Thyatira is fourth. Boy, that's awful handwriting, isn't it? Sardis is 5. Philadelphia, awful looking P and H. Philadelphia, the Church of Brotherly Love, is 6. And then, of course, at the end is Laodicea, that we read about in Revelation 3. Whoops. Yeah. And which is the 7th. Now, the Laodicea cannot be saved. It's the church that's spewed out. So Laodicea has to return to the experience, the spiritual experience of the Millerites in the 1840 to 1844 time period, which is here. So Laodicea has to return to the experience of the Millerites, the church of brotherly love. So then if we have a new Philadelphia, over here at the end, then it's the 8th and is of the 7. So this riddle of Revelation 17 applies to the 7 churches. Over here we have, they're going to be the 144,000. The 8th, which is of the 7. Now, Laodicea was noted to become so in 1856. And at that time, God tried to revive the faith of Laodicea by sending them some messages, letters, articles that were printed in the Review and Herald by Hiram Edson. I don't remember how many it was, but only a few of them were printed by James White in Review and Herald. But the main thrust of Hiram Edson's articles, Hiram, Hiram Edson, the Whites thought so highly of him, they named their first son Edson. Wrote about the 7 times of Leviticus 25 and 26. Now, the 7 times is also known as the 25-20, but you were familiar with the Sabbath of the week law, but the 7 times in Leviticus 25 and 26 is what we would call the Sabbath of the Sabbath of the land, letting the land rest every 7 years. Well, Israel never did that, so they fell under the curse, which Daniel referred to, the curse of Moses. Boy, that's an awful F. Moses, which is Leviticus 26 and 25. The curse of Moses. And that's Daniel referred to that in Daniel 9, in his prayer in Daniel 9, referring to the curse or the oath of Moses. I think my handwriting is getting worse. The oath of Moses. So the purpose of Laodicea having to return to Philadelphia, to the experience of Philadelphia, is the same as the experience that was had in Ephesus, the pure apostolic church. And this is where God is trying to get his people nowadays to apostolic purity. And part of that was restoring the seventh-day Sabbath. And lately, it's going to be part of the seventh year Sabbath also. When Ellen White writes about God's people going forth in the last days to proclaim the Sabbath more fully, well, Seventh-day Adventism has preached the seventh-day Sabbath for 150 years. You pretty well got all the juice out of that there can be found. But when the people of God in the last days, in the final crisis, go out to preach the Sabbath more fully, the only way we can preach the Sabbath more fully is than we have in the past is to preach the Sabbath of the land law, to teach that. Because at the end of the Sabbath of the land, there was the Jubilee, which was on the Day of Atonement. And we believe we're in the anti-typical Day of Atonement now. That's why we abstain from certain foods. It's a symbol of fasting, the antitype to the fasting the Israelites did during the Day of Atonement. So at the time of the end, the crisis that's coming, we read about it in Great Controversy 266 and 7 and thereabouts, where Ellen White says that 1798 is the time of the end. The time of the end. Every time prophecy has its own time of the end. And in Daniel 11:40. Excuse me. Now we can read a whole lot of articles about Daniel 11:40 and the time of the end on the website called Future for America .org futureforamerica.org. There are real good articles there you really should read in order to get up to speed on where prophecy is going. So in 1798, the king of the South, which was atheistic France at that time, made so by the atheistic Jacobins, who later became, or was already, the Illuminati, the Rothschilds, the Bilderbergers, all those conspiracy, world-ruling elite families. And, Revelation 11:8. So the king of the South, which is atheistic France, pushed that. The king of the North, which of course was papal Rome, and France, of course, is also in Revelation 9. Sodom and Egypt. The atheism of Egypt and the licentiousness of Sodom. And France is a lot that way still today. So what happened? Papal Rome, the king of the North, together with the army of the USA, retaliated against atheism, which happened to be, by the time you get around to, let's say, 1989, that's when this happened. Papal Rome and the USA, not E, what am I saying? And the armies of the USA took out atheism, as it had resurrected, it moved from France to Russia in 1917, the Russian Revolution, the atheism of the USSR. The United Soviet Socialist Republics, and broke them up so that Rome could sweep into the Eastern European bloc countries and overflow and pass over, as it says in Daniel 11:40. So this Daniel 11:40 covers a period of I think it's 191 years or something like that. It's a long verse. So 1989 was the time of the end for our current era, let's say, when the USA became the armies of Rome to take out the atheism of the USSR so that Rome could move in and reclaim the Eastern European countries. And beyond that, the United States is opening the way for Rome to take over the world, which they absolutely do plan to do. Now, in another illustration of the eighth, which is of the seven from Revelation 17, 8 being of the seven. In 1989, Reagan was just finishing being president. We would say he's number one. And then after him came Bush the elder, Bush 1, that's number 2. Then Clinton, number 3. Then Bush 2, Bush the younger, Bush the lesser, he's number 4. Then Obama, he's number 5, horrible looking 5. And then, of course, there was Trump, number 6. And then Biden, pretty bad looking B there, huh? Let's try that over again. Huh. Okay, B-I-D-E, and Biden is number 7. And I have to say this, I've been saying this for years at futureforamerica.org, that Trump will be back as the 8th, blew that. Well, if that's all I blow, I'm still doing pretty good. Trump is the 8th who is of the 7, because he already was there once before. So absolutely, Trump is going to win the presidency, not Kamala Harris, the governmental DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion hire, who doesn't hardly know which way is up. I don't know how she got to be a district attorney somewhere in New York. But anyway, Trump will be back, and he is going to fulfill the role of Xerxes, and Xerxes at the end of Medo-Persia, and of Alexander the Great in Grecia, which is worldwide. He's going to get control of the globalists and bring in unite church and state. He's a uniting of church and state in himself, because the Protestants, the evangelicals in this country, support Trump and put him in office the first time, and he's more evangelically oriented than ever, but he doesn't really know the difference between Protestants and Catholics, because there is no difference anymore. And we're headed toward a one world government, the King of the North, under the rulership of the false prophet USA, dragon of the UN, and modern Rome, the beast, all ruling together. And they will bring in the Sunday laws, of course. And this is going to happen probably not long after Trump gets back in office again. So things are going to get shaky. They might get a little better for a short time, but I'm expecting demonic miracles, according to some of the articles we read in futureforamerica.org.